The Book of 5 10-Foot Poles. Observations on Dungeon Design by Lawrence Schick. I was an early adopter of OD&D. Editor's note, also known as the original Dungeons & Dragons rule set from 1974, sometimes referred to as 0E. And have been designing dungeons for both tabletop and video games for nearly as long as such dungeons have been designed. I'm still at it, working at the time of this writing as a lead narrative designer for Larian Studios' Baldur's Gate 3, a Dungeons & Dragons video game. Fantasy role-playing games come in flavors for every taste, each with its own approach. But I found that where dungeons are concerned, there are some useful design principles with almost universal application for both tabletop and video games. We're going to take a brief look at 5 of them in this essay, under a title that's a tip of the helm to Miyamoto Musashi's The Book of 5 Rings. Pole 1. Boundaries. Dungeons & Dragons, the first commercially available role-playing game, added new concepts to the storyteller's toolbox, some of which have become so pervasive and familiar in modern media that it almost seems as if they have been around forever. These ideas include a character's health or hit points, defensive armor values, character skill sets grouped together as classes, and the revolutionary idea of character progression, or leveling up. Among these influential and now classic concepts must be included the idea of the dungeon, an enclosed, usually underground location consisting of a series of dangerous puzzles or combat areas, spaces that are encountered in a sequence defined by the dungeon's layout. Let's consider why dungeons are so important to role-playing games that they constitute half of the very title of the game that started it all. The stunning, and thrilling, promise of role-playing games is that their flexible rules enable the players to make, by collaboration and consensus, choices that simulate any situation the players can imagine, thus bursting the bonds and limitations of classical board and card games. Players use these rules to tell stories about their imagined selves, but stories require structure. And when you have the option to do literally anything, no choice has more meaning than any other choice. From a dramatic standpoint, everything is the same as nothing. Thus, the dungeon, which imposes a simple but rigorous structure on the player's actions, instantly transforming nothing into something. Exploring a dungeon gives players purpose. Its easily understood physical limitations give their actions clarity and focus, and the almost unlimited variety of spaces that can be encountered give the players broad scope to exercise their character's rule-defined capabilities and the player's own limitless imaginations. In this way, the very concept of an RPG, which had at least in theory abandoned all limitations, immediately offered a return to limits by setting play within a bounded environment that imposed an easy-to-grasp structure. When you make character decisions within a sequential structure, the result is story. Dungeons and RPGs are as useful today as they were in 1974, and though our options of encounter areas have moved beyond medieval underground structures to include almost any environment you can think of, these areas are still successful almost exactly to the extent to which they provide limitation in structure, focusing play and emphasizing some choices over others. We've gotten pretty abstract here, so let's get to the fundamental, concrete lesson that informs all dungeon design. A dungeon map is a flow chart, providing structure in both space and time, and keeping play choices within clearly defined limitations. This is not a new observation. It's obvious to anyone who has thought even casually about dungeon design. But the dungeon or level designer who forgets it or believes they can ignore or throw away the flowchart is mistaken, and their storytelling environment will suffer as a result.